Good evening. Oh,
The flags. Good thing they were in here earlier. It's going to be hard to post colors without the colors. Okay, I think we're ready now.
Good evening. I'd like to call the November 16, 2020 Wilson School Board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Mrs. Casper. Dr. Kennedy. Mrs. Cocker. Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. McCray.
Here.
Mr. Negrini.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Hart.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand. The posting of colors.
March. Detail. Halt. Left. Face. Sir, permission to post colors? Post colors. Present. Arms.
To the flag of the United States of America and to
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Go in reverse. March. Right. Face. Mark time. March. Forward. March.
We do not have any public participation on agenda items, so we'll move on. Do we have any communications? Mrs. Barcola?
No. Oh, sorry, for after the meeting.
We met in executive session this evening to discuss personnel issues. Under approval of the minutes, 2.1, request to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on November 2nd, 2020, as attached. Looking for a motion? Mr. Martin first, do you have a second? Mr. Schneider second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Treasurer's report, Mr. Martin.
Submit for approval tonight the following reports: the Treasury report, the investment report, the general fund and capital funds reports.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
McCray.
Mr. McCray, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin. Mr. McCray.
Yes.
Mr. Negrini.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Mr. Case.
Yes.
Mrs. Casper.
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
Mr. 940 against.
Payment of bills, Mr. Martin.
Submit for approval tonight out of the general fund $3,038,950.58, from the capital reserve $8,212.04, and from the 2019 A construction fund $40,810.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy. Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. McCray.
Yes.
Mr. Negrini.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Mr. Case.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Financial report, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight all for the month of October: the cafeteria report, the child care report, the activity accounts for middle school, West Middle School, and the senior high as presented.
Great, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
McCray.
Mr. McCray, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case.
Yes.
Mrs. Casper.
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. McCray.
Yes.
Mr. Negrini.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Fadley.
Thank you, President Hart. I present this evening the personnel and program recommendations as listed.
Looking for a motion to approve superintendent items 6.1 through 6.5 as presented.
Cocker.
Mrs. Cocker first. Do you have a second? Mrs. Casper, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCray.
Yes.
Mr. Negrini.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Mr. Case.
Yes.
Mrs. Casper.
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under consent items, 7.1, request to accept with gratitude from the Gensler family a minnow tank worth approximately $500 to the Wilson West Middle School for the Child in Classroom program. Do I have a motion? Mr. Schneider first. Do we have a second? Mrs. Casper, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Under Human Resources, 8.1, request to approve the employees for specialized leave under the FFCRA to ensure PSER's years of service credit is maintained. 8.2, request to approve the sign-on bonus of $250 for Caitlin Kirshner, preschool teacher. 8.3, request approval for the substitute staggered stipend for days worked effective December 1st, 2020 for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year, $275 additional stipend for every 20 days worked. 8.4, request to approve a 5-year written agreement with Brad Hahn effective January 1st, 2021 for the position of Director of Human Resources. The contract will be subject to final solicitor review and approval, documenting current position held by Mr. Hahn. Looking for a motion to approve 8.1 through 8.4.
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first. Do you have a second? Mr. Martin, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy? Yes. Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
yes,
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Student Services, Mrs. Cocker.
Yes. 9.1, request permission to approve the adoption of a settlement agreement and release to establish an education fund to be held and managed by the district in the amount of $15,000 for the sole use of paying for services delivered during the 2020-2021 school year by Linda Mood Bell, to settle and comprise all claims raised by the parents of a special education student, and to authorize the board president and secretary to execute the agreement on behalf of the district. 9.2, request approval of the legal services consultation agreement with Fox Rothschild LLP to provide services during the 2020-2021 school year. Members of the Fox attorney staff, as are available and are acceptable to the district, will provide telephone and electronic mail advice and opinions concerning special education, NCLBA compliance, student services, and student civil rights issues pertinent to the district in particular. Such opinions shall be provided to the administrator or administrators designated by the district as the content. Fees remain the same. 9.3, request approval of a service agreement with the Elite Educational and Therapeutic Support Services, LLC, to perform an independent educational evaluation at a fee not to exceed $4,500 and a physical therapy evaluation at a fee not to exceed $3,000 in accordance with board policy number 113.3.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve Student Services, agenda items 9.1 through 9.3 as presented. Mrs. Casper first. Do I have a second? Mr. Schneider second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider? Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
yes,
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Operations, 10.1, request to approve a contract with Crabtree, Rohrbach, and Associates for the architectural services for the following projects determined to be necessary as a result of the feasibility study performed by Crabtree, subject to final solicitor review and approval by specific not to exceed costs, which will be determined through amendments to be approved by the board. Looking for a motion? Mr. Negrini first. Do we have a second? Dr. Kennedy. Any discussion? Mr. Martin.
So I don't know how much of this will be discussed after the board meeting in our executive session, but let me start off by saying I was kind of disappointed with the presentation on this past Monday. Some of the information which I did not see from the financial standpoint, just had my first chance to see it that night. Other items I was kind of disappointed with. The lack of really true substance in the presentation from the standpoint, it was the old adage is law of form over substance. And here's some of the reasons that I found that we should think about before we throw $90 to $100 million at a project that has some really potential question marks. Here's some, like I said, here's a few of my major concerns. A lot of the data that Insight used was presented to them through school administrators, which really isn't the appropriate way to do any type of study when you're looking at enrollments, regardless whether it's you're building a mall, you're building a hospital, or any of those such things. You're really supposed to be an arm's length transaction. The data was reviewed by one of the leading real estate agencies in Berks County. They found some errors with the report, some question marks. Some of the properties were counted twice. There was hypothetical usage in some of the calculations which weren't warranted. A lot of the errors that they showed did not have the approvals for permits, nor were some of the properties even purchased at that point in time. So those are some of the things that were brought to my attention. Financing is another concern. As you may or may not, you've heard that a lot of the banks and investors have backed away from transactions that have not been secured at least 2 years, 3 years previous to the COVID situation. A couple months ago, the Finance Committee met and we looked at the feasibility study, and there was an option to have it upgraded. We chose not to upgrade that report because we felt that it wasn't that reliable, and with COVID, we were unsure about the uncertainty of what was to move forward. Everybody in attendance was in agreement with that. A new study should be performed. We're looking at a $90 to $100 million project, but yet we won't spend $25,000, $30,000 for a study. Yet this past year, we have wasted over $300,000 of taxpayers' expense due to, well, let's put it this way, mistakes made by the administration. Oops, hold on, I don't want to miss any of these pages here. And the new study, like I said, should be performed, it should be objective, it should be arm's length transaction, and it should not have any input by the school. Let's see. I mean, I just feel that we've wasted time, we've wasted money, we don't know about the uncertainty, and we're going to spend $7,500. I saw what we were trying to prove tonight to do analysis of the Lincoln Park property. This was analyzed years ago, and at that point in time, things could have changed, but the maximum building allowable on that would be 420 students. So. And this property now we have, I think, 700 projected for that area, which I'm not sure that's even going to get approved. But we did this study once before, and like I said, the maximum was 420 students for that particular property. You know, we always say we want the community involvement in this, and I understand we did campus through surveys, and Karen did a good job, but we left out quite a bit of people that have input. So if we want to really challenge ourselves, we should put this on a referendum for March. Let the voters decide whether this is a good project, bad project, or indifferent to the subject. And finally, I'm not going to go through all the pages because I don't know how much is going to be discussed tonight in executive session, but I really feel strongly about this. The credibility of the information is very questionable. Experts have reviewed it. The information on the finances are projected out were a little bit weak from the standpoint it didn't encompass many items that are going to increase those costs. So we're going to be at least $3 million in a deficit. Even if we raise the taxes to the maximum of 24%, there's a big question whether we can even fund these projects. And I can go into some of that later. So, you know, the plan, I believe, is unwarranted in its present state. I believe there's other options available to secure the proper education experience for all our children, to give them fair and equitable education. And I feel so strong about this, I really have to rethink my thought process to be even part of this discussion in the Finance Committee, because I feel so strongly about the information that I have that we will show at a different point in time. And I'll save the rest for later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other comments or discussion?
Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mr. Negrini.
Just for clarification, this motion that's before the board for a vote does not in any way commit spending of any dollars for construction. And certainly I think it's right in the future, as we continue to discuss what, if anything, should be spent, but if we're going to have a real valid discussion about whether we should or should not build a new elementary school or do some renovations over at Southern and the other items that are part of this architectural services contract, I think we need to at least move this ball further down the road. All of the points that Mr. Martin raises are certainly worthy of further discussion, and whether or not we are committing down the road to spending 90 to 100 million, or that's scaled back significantly or not at all. But we've kind of kicked this can around long enough, and I think we need to have some better information and better figures by moving forward with at least the service contract that's before the board. And I just wanted to make that clear for the public that this is not a commitment to spending 90 to 100 million dollars.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would just add, and Mike, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with regard to what's at question, you questioned the numbers, I'm assuming for mostly the elementary school. I thought we were all in agreement that Southern probably should have some sort of facelift or boost up, whether you had a report or numbers, or that's not the argument, correct?
No, I'm not arguing. Certain projects need to be accomplished. There's no
Okay.
discussion about that.
So this is, when we talk about the auditorium, there are a lot of, for lack of a better word, defects. We need to upgrade the auditorium. Most people have basically said that, or at least we should explore the options and the cost. So with regard to fields and auditorium and Southern, I'm assuming you're somewhat okay to go a little bit further. It's just you have an issue with the numbers for the elementary school.
To answer your question, yes, I think the due diligence should be done, but that's the key. The right due diligence is all I'm requesting, that's all.
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
No?
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
Under Finance, 11.1, request permission to receive the audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. 11.2, request approval of the budget transfers dated October 15th, 2020 through November 11th, 2020 as attached. 11.3, request permission to submit 5 delinquent accounts to Berks County Tax Bureau, Claim Bureau. And looking for motion to approve 11.1 through 11.3 as presented. Mr. Martin, first. Do we have a second? Mr. Negrini, any discussion?
I just want to thank Christine and her department for doing an outstanding job, especially during the COVID situation. A lot of this was done remotely and back and forth, but it's a testament to the quality of the staff that makes this very easy for us as a finance committee to approve. Once again, thank you very much for your support.
Any other comments? We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Child Care, 12.1, request approval for the revision of the Berkshire Heights Early Learning Center calendar. Berkshire Heights will be closed Wednesday, December 23rd at 5:30 p.m. and reopen on January 4th at 6:30 a.m. Closure for 3 days, December 28th, 29th, and 30th. Do you have a motion?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first. Do you have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion?
I just read this again, and I'm a little confused, and once again, apologize for this, but it says, "We'll close on December 23rd at 5 p.m. and reopen on January 4th at 6:30 a.m." And I don't understand the closure for 3 days, December 28th through 30th.
I can address that question.
Mr. Martin? Currently, we have protocols in place that separate the students into different classrooms so that there's not crossover. And at this time of year, the number of students that are accessing that particular experience are creating a situation where in order for us to continue to provide those services, we would have to pool the kids together. And that goes against our health and safety protocols that we have been utilizing throughout the course of the year with not bringing students into different classrooms.
All right, it's a subset of the full week then.
Yeah, because I guess there's already weekends and known holidays already.
Yeah, got it.
Makes sense, yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under extracurricular, 13.1, request approval of the following rates for the game personnel for District 3 playoffs for the fall 2020 season. Ticket seller, $50. Crowd control, $75. Announcer, $60. Scorekeeper, $60. And clock operator, $60. Looking for a motion to approve?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first. Do you have a second? Mr. McCray, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under policies for final reading, Mrs. Cocker.
14.1, final reading and adoption of the following revised policies. Number 111, lesson plans. Number 203, immunizations and communicable diseases. Number 407, student teachers, interns. Number 504, employment of support employees. Number 533.1, course reimbursement. Number 541, benefits for regularly employed part-time personnel. Number 550.1, appropriate use of electronic communication between staff and students. Number 904, public attendance at school events. 14.2, request to repeal the following policies. Number 429, substitute compensation. Number 405, employment of substitute professional employees replaces it. And 14.3, approve policies, adoptions, and repeal retire agenda items number 14.1 and 14.2.
Looking for a motion to approve 14.1 through 14.2. Mr. Martin first. Do we have a second?
Casper.
Mrs. Casper. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
And 14.4 is just the first reading of the policies listed. Under miscellaneous, we have the enrollment report. For committee reports, 16.1, Berks Career and Technology Center, Mrs. Casper.
10th.
Great. How about the task force?
And the task force, yes, we met on November 4th in the high school library, and we participated in a lively conversation about active listening and how to have good conversations around race. We talked a lot about listening strategies and shared personal experiences about when we all felt heard. We reviewed, once again, the student feedback, and we cited basically a desire to develop events and activities to raise awareness around race and equity. To this end, we'd like to see, or I'd like to see, a little more effort on the committee's part to join forces with perhaps the students, particularly the new club, STAR, which stands for Stand Together Against Racism, and perhaps even invite some of the student members to host a discussion with the leadership or as part of a series of exercises that we could do with the board. Just an idea. There seems to be some good consensus to keep the conversation going and in the forefront, and I would agree that we can't lose sight of some of these issues. The committee is recognizing that these issues of racial justice and equity go way beyond the scope of just one committee. So we hope to develop some subcommittees around areas such as human resources, curriculum, student support, and different activities we could do. These include goals such as increasing the representation among our staff. How can we find more staff that is representative of our student population? Accessing the data regarding discipline, higher level courses, and identifying some next steps. Consider having our professional development around race to be a district-wide effort. So integrating issues of race across the curriculum and also providing pedagogical support for faculty. We all seem to be in agreement that a common goal should be to build more empathy in our students. We also hope to instill and foster a sense of willingness and curiosity in students so that they desire to understand differing perspectives. That's my report. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 2nd at 3.
Thank you. 16.3, Berks County IU, Dr. Kennedy.
No report for the IU or the curriculum committee because we haven't met since the last meeting, but it is a busy meeting week. We have a curriculum committee meeting this Wednesday at 4, and I have a BCIU meeting this Thursday at 6:15.
Okay, thank you. 16.5, Berks EIT, Mrs. Schlossman. 16.6, extracurricular, Mrs. Copper.
Yes, we held our meeting on, sorry, one second, just trying, Monday, November 9th at noon. And on the non-athletic extracurricular side, the Wilson Theater group performed Almost Maine and was a huge success. They had limited in-person attendance and live stream options. The students were all in masks for the performance. And anybody interested should look out in December. They will be performing Little Women, which is ironic because my daughter and I just watched that over the weekend, so it's very timely. So again, I believe they'll be offering live stream options. And I just want to congratulate the group for their amazing performance for Almost Maine. And I know that a lot of parents and student athletes have emailed board members in relation to winter sports and what's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. But the board as a whole will have a good discussion on this at a future time, and we have no concrete decision on that. Everything will remain as is, and just kind of stay tuned to see what happens in our ever-changing situation. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. And again, to the community, students, parents, and staff, we appreciate the emails that you're sending, whether for, against, or support of. So thank you for your time. And we will be dealing with that at, I believe, our next board meeting. 16.7, Facilities Committee, Mr. Negrini.
No report.
16.8, Finance Committee, Mr. Martin.
No report.
16.9, Human Resources, no report. 16.10, Legislative, Mr. Martin.
You know, not a lot's going to be happening. The legislators have recessed. They've done their reappointment of committees and so forth. And I guess the big news is that for the first time there'll be a black lady leading the Democratic Forum in the House, and there'll be another lady for the first time leading the Senate in the Senate. So we have two women now in key positions with both parties. As you know, you probably read the results of the election. The governor will maintain, obviously, in his position, and it's going to have some fights with the Senate again and the House because both will be controlled by the Republicans, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because there has to be give and take, which makes politics work better when there's a give and take. So that's about it for right now.
Great, thank you. 16.11, Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
I just have that was loud. I just have a few items. Ms. Clark actually has a lot of things that have been going on in the community in her report. So I'm just going to mention just two really quick things. It's National Education Week this week, so it's going to look a little different this year. Typically, we have, families coming in and visiting classrooms and PTOs coming in, but we still do have our community supporting our teachers with different acknowledgments this week. And we're also going to be running a social media campaign, just again, acknowledging all the amazing work of our educators and recognizing them throughout the week this week. We also want to mention that actually last week, the week of November 9th through the 13th, school districts across the country celebrated National School Psychology Week to highlight the important work of our school psychologists and other educators who do all they do to help our students thrive. So we recognized our amazing school counselors through a district-wide staff email that Dr. Hoffert sent out, through social media, as well as our weekly Bulldog Blitz. So we just really want to thank this amazing team for the incredible work they do each and every day for our school community. Thank you.
Thank you. 16.12, Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
The Wilson Education Foundation, there's no report. However, the next meeting is this Friday here at 7:30. Thanks.
Thank you. 16.13, Technology Chair, Mr. Schneider.
I have no report, but to announce that the date of the meeting was changed from December 7th to the 21st.
Thank you. Student Outreach, Mr. Johnny Clark.
Last Friday, November 13th, the Wilson High School Mini-Thon had a successful drive-in movie night. Thank you to the Wilson community for your support. Mini-Thon's next event is this Wednesday, November 18th at PJ's. The club is also having a virtual 5K fun run. Registration and T-shirts for this event can be found on the Wilson High School Mini-Thon donor drive. The Wilson High School National Honor Society is giving back to the community by cooking and bringing in meals that are donated to the Opportunity House. The Honor Society will participate in providing breakfast each Sunday for the next few weeks. As Mrs. Cocker said, the Wilson Theater Company is currently rehearsing Little Women the musical. The show opens on December 17th and will continue through December 19th. In recognition of National Education Week, the student government is putting cards in each mailbox for teachers, so teachers, please look out for that. They should be in your mailboxes on Friday, so we just want to give back and thank you for all your work.
Great. Thank you. Under other business, we have two items for participation on non-agenda items.
Yes, so we had two comments. The first is regarding Wilson School District in-person learning. I wanted to simply share some positive feedback with the district, from teachers and in-building support staff to the school board and superintendent. As a parent of two Whitfield in-person students, we cannot thank you all enough for the dedication to keeping our kids safe and learning in person. Our kids are happy, healthy, and thriving intellectually thanks to Wilson School District's commitment to setting the example versus following suit with regard to digital and in-person learning options. The COVID-19 dashboard on the district website is a great asset and also much appreciated. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The second one is regarding subs. Could you please update the public on the substitute situation in our district? Other schools in our county have went virtual due to staff shortages. For long-term subs, there really isn't much transition time. My son is on his second long-term sub a week before conferences. Are we still able to get subs with teaching degrees? Are long-term sub positions being offered to teachers without teaching degrees?
Thank you. Dr. Bailey, I'll turn that over to you to have one of your administrators. Thank you. Any other business from the board? Mr. Martin?
Yes, I forgot. under my report, the most important thing I thought was pretty great about the women elected to key positions. I forgot probably what's the most detrimental part of what I wanted to say was, even though revenues have increased a little bit over projections, the legislators have to cope with a $5 billion deficit. So that's going to be a problem, and not only this year, but they're projecting a budget deficit next year too. So I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest with you. That's a big number. So I forgot to mention that, which is probably very, very important. That's it.
Thank you. Any other items?
Mr. Hart?
Yes, Mr. Negrini.
Just to circle back around to the extracurricular committee report, I think it's disappointing and unfair to our student athletes and co-curricular participants that they're going to have to wait another 3 weeks for this board to make a decision on whether or not we should move forward with allowing the status quo to continue. Certainly, there have been other organizations that have made some decisions as to whether or not to move forward or not move forward at this point. And as has been previously indicated, so long as it's a local decision in the matter, we put safety protocols in place that has allowed for the safe performance of those activities during the fall. And so now you're going to have hundreds of kids for the next 3 weeks wondering whether or not they're actually going to have a season. And based upon, some knowns and unknowns that may take place over the next couple of weeks. I reiterate my position that I made when we voted on this decision on fall sports. If the state is going to shut us all down, so be it. The PIAA is going to cancel sports, let them do that. But considering what we have done over the last couple of months, and that we continue to receive rave reviews from neighboring jurisdictions, parents, student athletes, etc., I see no reason to change course at this point. And hopefully, a consideration will be made to take up this matter tonight and answer a lot of questions to those people that are going to be worried over the next 3 weeks.
Thank you. Dr. Paley, any comment?
Certainly, there's been a lot of conversation across Berks County regarding the current elevation in our positivity rates across the county. There have been several school districts that have made decisions regarding winter sports to date. Obviously, the recommendation coming out of the extracurricular committee meeting was to bring this item to the board for board consideration. The thoughts regarding moving that particular vote to December 7th were to allow our student athletes to begin their practice portion of their season, to ascertain some additional information from Berks County and many of the districts. We're scheduled again to have a conversation as a group of superintendents tomorrow at noon, so that there's a better understanding as to who is and who isn't proceeding. There was a survey taken that I included in the board update last Friday, but things have changed significantly since Friday, and many districts are moving a different direction. I do believe that, as Mr. Negrini has said, we have done an excellent job as a school district in navigating through this particular fall season. 657 athletes. Our coaches and student athletes took the protocols and the measures very seriously. But again, my hope was to have some additional information regarding what other school districts are doing, because there's quite a bit of conversation going on whether or not many districts are going to suspend or delay the winter sports season to January. So I was hoping to have a little bit more information going into the December 7th board meeting so that we didn't vote on an issue prematurely in the event that individuals around the county decided they didn't want to proceed.
Any other comments moving forward? Do you want to have a discussion on that, Mr. Negrini, or what are your thoughts?
So is there any benefit of Wilson leading the way? We are doing this safely. Ryan, for Berks County, if Wilson talked about this and committed to it, wouldn't that help the cause of, and again, I think about the senior student athlete that might have been borderline in their sport. There's a lot at stake with regard to colleges and what some of these kids are going to do for the rest of their lives. And that kid who's on the borderline really needs their senior year. You know, I don't want that in my hands. And yes, there's safety protocols and there's COVID. We never went into, as we have said, to mitigate this. This is to manage the risk, not eliminate it. And our administration, our coaches, our trainers, everyone involved has been doing a fantastic job here at Wilson. Why wouldn't we want to be the role model and the leader in this again, similar to how we did that in the fall? I mean, I don't know what changed. I thought we were going to have a talk about this today. I mean, our student athletes have been practicing for basketball, for wrestling, water polo. We've been doing indoor sports all fall for the last couple of months, and we've been doing it safely. I'm not sure what has changed other than the outside population numbers have gone up. But internally, as we have reports in the dashboard, all the stuff is from people with being irresponsible outside of our school or outside of our athletics. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't take care of this evening and move on. I understand your point that you want to speak to the other superintendents and such, but I mean, if it is a local decision, I mean, if we left it just the way it is right now, we can still continue on what we've been doing and still have a season for the winter. I'm not even sure why there's even a vote tonight.
Well, and to the point, it's not on the agenda because things are going to be continuing on. So we have a discussion when Dr. Bailey has more information to help further our discussion on this. So nothing is stopping them from practicing. Those practice activities are still continuing.
When is fall sport, when's winter sports supposed to start? When's our first winter sport?
The first official competition, Mr. Kaufman, is on
December 11th will be the first competition date. Practice is going to start this Friday.
December 11th.
So we're starting practices on Friday. Are there any like, not games, but scrimmages or anything?
There are scrimmages scheduled for the
With other, so I think we really do need to address this. If we're going to have scrimmages with other teams outside the district, I think this needs to be addressed. I don't care if it's a scrimmage or a real game. I think it has to be addressed sooner than later.
So, Mr. Maravich, if the board were to want to consider this particular item this evening, what would be necessary?
Well, I mean, there's already like a motion for to address it. I mean, are you in?
Well, no, I'm sorry.
I think we ought to wait to see the results of the entire fall sports team that is currently under quarantine before we make any decisions. Since everything's gone so perfectly, I think we forget there's an entire team under a 2-week quarantine. So let's see what happens with that team to see how many positives come out of that.
I would suggest that really the only thing that should come before the board for a vote is to say that we are not continuing with winter sports. Otherwise, we should remain as it is currently set, that we put in place in the fall, and that if there is some real significant health concern that at any time, someone could come and make a motion to the board to say, we need to shut this down, as opposed to just kind of leaving it out for the next 3 weeks. So as far as I'm concerned, what is in place is that our winter sports are going to begin as they're required and allowed to under PIAA rules starting Friday. And unless this board says we have a motion before us to shut it all down, we continue as is. I don't know why it has to be this dramatic decision 3 weeks from now whether or not we should continue on with what we're doing. That's my point.
My comment to that would be, nothing. Go ahead.
I computer died, so I can't look it up. I thought your motion originally to go with the administration's recommendation wasn't limited to all sports, but I could be wrong about that. So
That would be my comment as well, like why are we going to revisit this again in 2 months or 3 months for spring sports? I think we should just make an overall decision that we're going to move forward with sports or not move forward with sports. If we need to stop it at any time, no matter where we are in what season, we just make that call then. I think we should just, to your point, we have practices going on right now, we have conditioning going on right now. Let's just be clear that we're talking about all sports moving forward, and then again, if we have to stop at some point, we'll make that motion and go from there.
again, I may
So
be-
just to clarify, the way this board operates is through the committee structure. This was a recommendation to come to the board as an item on the agenda from the extracurricular committee. So
To say what?
Well,
What was the recommendation?
the
the recommendation was to have the board vote on whether or not the Wilson School District would move forward with winter sports. That was the item that came out of committee.
Did they have a recommendation whether to support or not to support? Or they just wanted the vote to be given?
Whether or not winter sports would continue in Wilson.
But I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, did that committee say we want to stop or we want to start? There has to be a feeling one or the other. Mr. Martin?
Here's what, we didn't have enough, we didn't have all the information. There was some additional information requested, which you probably saw in your updates, okay? Nobody wanted to make a decision. The committee did not feel like it was their job to make a recommendation one way or another, okay? I wasn't going to say that we're going to have sports or not have sports, because it was a bigger picture, just like the feasibility study, encompasses every board member, and if there was some reason why we should stop housing sports, then that should be a board decision. But as of now, there's been no change. But if the board makes, if there's some reason that we believe that there's danger or something, that's a board decision. It's not a committee decision.
So again, part of the information that was provided in the Friday update was to give the board information in reference to what our current positive rates were with our fall athletes, to give the board information regarding how things are going in our school system. Also to share with the board that current winter sport athletes have been working since July with their open workouts, participating in AAU, participating in wrestling competition, etc., outside of the school programs, so that this board, based on the committee saying that it was a board-level decision, could make the decision. So I guess all it would take this evening is for a board member to make a recommendation, and there would be a second, and we could solve this tonight. I mean, I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other in terms of this board making the decision, but the extracurricular committee had moved this forward as an agenda item.
I don't have a problem voting on it tonight. I support going forward with it. The only area where I actually have a different concern than I did in the fall would be, rather than putting it in our hands to reconvene to stop sports, I would like to see some sort of like a hard metric that if this occurs, then the plug gets pulled. But in terms of voting on it tonight, I would be okay with that, although I would like to hear the additional information that you were going to bring to the next meeting.
And just to clear up, your hard metric, is that for sports overall or like per team or?
I don't know, I think based on the way the rates are going in general, there needs to be a way to stop, whether it's the team or whether it's the sports in their entirety. I don't know what it looks like, though.
Okay. Yeah, because I would just have a difficulty saying junior high, basketball versus high school swimming, there's an issue here, but there's not an issue here, and then we're saying overall we're just stopping it. I think there should be some.
Right, well, I think you could have both, actually. You could have this would
overall,
cause this team to stop, and then this would cause the whole program to stop.
No, good point.
Is there a motion that somebody would like to make regarding winter sports?
I'd like to make a motion that winter sports continue as scheduled and in compliance with the recommendation made to continue with fall sports, with the idea that this board can reconvene in an emergency basis at any point if the numbers warrant shutting things down. But I would make a motion for this evening to vote on the continuation with winter sports as scheduled.
Mr. Negrini, would you consider making a motion for winter and spring sports to combine?
I think, yes, I think that's probably, as you indicated, the best way, that at any point, if this board decides that we want to discontinue anything moving forward, we can reconvene and certainly shut things down.
I would like to completely and totally disagree with that because I believe in science.
Well, hold on, real quick. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second case.
Mr. Case, second. Mr. Green first. Mr. Case, second. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Kennedy.
this is ridiculous because we're talking about apples and oranges here. The science says that we're okay outside. The science says that that being inside, it puts you at greater risk than being outside. And we've already seen a case of a club sport that has our students in our district have been infected, and that has in turn infected staff members in our district. We have an entire high school sport that's under quarantine right now, and I think that it's unfair to lump everything together. Like, I think swimming is very different than basketball or wrestling. Like, I think having wrestling is kind of bananas if you believe in the idea that you shouldn't be unmasked next to someone for 15 minutes or more, or you risk exposure. I think playing baseball in the spring is a total different thing than wrestling, and it's unfair to lump all those sports. Like the kids in rifling, God bless them, they won a winning season, and I don't foresee any issue with rifle, but I do see a complete and total difference with contact indoor sports. And the science says, without question, that indoor is not as safe as being outdoors.
And I would like to add on to Dr. Kennedy's comment. While fall sports involve a large number of athletes, especially considering football was involved, and winter sports, although it affects less students, all of the activities are indoors. Almost all of the athletics, except for swimming and rifle, require students to be within 6 feet of each other. And our cases in our both schools and our community, our current positivity rate for our staff members that are being tested is around 10%. And our community spread, a huge jump from yesterday to today, just within our own local zip codes, are in numbers close to 30% for West Lawn, 23% for 19608 for Spring Township. This is not something that is going to stay contained in our gyms or in our teams. If students are participating in athletics indoors within 6 feet of each other, unmasked, and they spread COVID to each other, and then those students go home. This is not something that is a difficult concept. It's going to continue to have community spread. So I'm absolutely against. I kind of wish that this would have been left alone, like the extracurricular committee asked to give a little more time, because I would have been okay at the moment with our students continuing practicing. But if the decision is to continue at all or to stop, then my decision absolutely would be to stop.
Dr. Pavley?
I just want to make a few comments regarding our student athletes. Obviously, we've demonstrated from July to present time that we've done an excellent job in our sports programs, following the health and safety protocols. We also need to be very, very cognizant of the fact that our student athletes will continue to participate in sports programs outside of the school environment, in basketball, outside of the school environment, in wrestling. And it is my personal opinion that I would much rather have our coaches under the control of our student athletes, because our student athletes have taken this very seriously in terms, because they understand what the risks are if they don't follow the mask protocol and they don't follow the distancing protocol. And I do support our winter sports continuing as superintendent through the lens of our Wilson coaches controlling those environments. Our athletes, like I just stated, they will go out and participate outside of the school if the school doesn't provide the opportunity. I would also add that many of our student athletes, I'll lump student athletics with drama, with band, with all of those programs. Those are critical to the mental health of our students. What we've seen from the data during this pandemic is that the number of teen suicides has skyrocketed. And I'm not saying it's all because of athletics, but it is because they don't have an outlet to get away from that isolation. So this is, in my opinion, is a very important decision that this board makes. As superintendent, I support moving forward. But it's my job as superintendent to move things through the agenda structure at the will of the committees and let this board decide if that's what I'm directed to do, whether or not we move forward or not. But it's important for me to state my opinion, because I do believe that the benefits of having kids participate outweighs the negative impact of having them not participate. And we've seen that by the positive nature of our culture in our school system because of our fall athletic programs, our fall play, our ability for kids to get together and interact socially following our health and safety.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? The first, second, roll call, please.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
No.
Mrs. Cocker,
No.
Mr. Martin, Mr. Hart.
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no.
Any other business before the board? Looking for a motion to adjourn? Mr. Schneider first, you have a second? Mr. Case, thank you.